and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the Fireside Chat, where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. My name's Leila Mackenzie-Dellis, and today I am delighted to be interviewing the wonderful Vismay Sharma. I'm at the L'Oreal headquarters, and I have to say it's probably every girl's dream to be here, and so very excited. Vismay has had a wonderful international career. He's at the helm of L'Oreal as their UK and Ireland country manager. He also looks after a plethora of different brands. The brand L'Oreal actually has 26 diverse and unique brands, a number of which are sitting here behind me today. And I'm very, very keen to learn a little bit more and share with our listeners and delve into Vismay's international background, his 23 years at L'Oreal, and some of the key leadership pieces he's learnt along the way. Welcome to the show, Vismay.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for allowing us all in behind the doors of L'Oreal and to learn a little bit more about you. I thought it would be wonderful just to start things off if perhaps you could share a little bit with our viewers and our listeners a couple of the current projects, of which I'm sure there are many, that you're working on at the moment within L'Oreal.
Yeah, so in my current role as country manager for L'Oreal UK and Ireland, well, first and foremost, I'm blessed to have a very strong team with myself, which means that the day-to-day running of the business is completely entrusted to the team. I have full faith that they are doing a brilliant job. They're doing a much better job than I could do. So that's one part which is taken care of, and which kind of frees up my time to focus a bit more on strategic, a bit more long-term subjects like the big shifts in terms of consumer expectations, the shift of retail channels, the big digital transformation of our society, the way of life, etc., etc. And at the same time preparing for things like Brexit, which is an absolute delight, as you can imagine.
Goodness. Oh, isn't it just?
Yeah, it is. And of course, L'Oreal, as you know, we've got 36 international brands. In the UK, we have 36 brands. Of course, globally, we have now 38. We keep on acquiring brands all the time. And L'Oreal is a company which is very driven by innovation. We are a company that launches a lot of new products. We've got 4,000 scientists who carry out research on beauty products all the time. So the capacity of L'Oreal to come up with new molecules, new benefits, new formulations is by far the biggest in the industry, and that's one of the key reasons we are the leaders in the market. So we have a lot of launches all the time. So every month we've got a whole lot of new products that are coming out. So obviously with the team, working closely with them to understand what they're launching, why they're launching, because it all starts with the consumer and what the consumer wants. So no, we've got a lot of projects going on at the same time, and it's super exciting, and it's very, very exciting to be in the UK.
Absolutely, and that all the innovation is why it is the number one player in the market, and obviously, billion plus now as a global player.
Yes, absolutely. So L'Oreal, just in terms of numbers, we are now more than 30 billion euro in terms of turnover. Mm-hmm. Of course, in the UK market, UK is the 5th largest subsidiary for us, and it's well over £1 billion, and we crossed the £1 billion mark a few years back. It continues to grow. The company has been doing very well globally. We've had one of our best results in a decade recently, which was announced globally. In the UK market, we are in a leadership position in almost every category that we operate in, which is something really strong. And we are leaders in most of the channels that we operate in, and that's something that we are really proud of. And this is all built thanks to, of course, the innovation strength of the organization. We've got these scientists that I spoke about, 4,000 scientists. We invest well over 3% of our turnover. That's close to $1 billion every year I invested in research and innovation. Then we have these very strong brands which bring this innovation to a consumer in a language that resonates with her. So when you have a big portfolio of brands, and some of the most beautiful brands in beauty are a part of the L'Oreal group. And then the third biggest strength of L'Oreal is the 90,000 people who are all united by this passion of bringing the best of beauty to every consumer everywhere in the world. So when you put these things together, the ingredients are perfect for a very nice meal. You were telling me about the fact that you were at Ritz recently. So of course we don't cook something that you can eat, but we do cook something which makes your life more spicy and more interesting.
Absolutely, it's all the ingredients that equal success, and it's that innovation, it's that diversity of thought, and obviously leadership that you and the many other individuals in the business bring to the table that make this so special as a brand. And Vismay, talk to me a little, because I know that you obviously mentioned, you know, you've worked in India, you're an Indian national,
Yes.
you've had all this global experience, which is wonderful. And as we are on the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders Show, it'd be great to kind of scratch below the surface and find out a little bit about how you came to be where you are today, and the fact that you've had all this international experience. You know, did the young Vismay envisage that he would be at the helm leading UK and Ireland here in London, you know, way back a couple of decades ago when you were making your way up the career ladder?
Well, to be honest, no. This is the second time I'm working in the UK. The first time I was here was way back in 1999, 2000. I had no idea I'm going to be back in 20 years, or well, actually 16 years. I'm going to be back and I'll be heading the subsidiary. But if I rewind a little bit and if I go back to the start, so I joined L'Oreal straight out of campus. This was actually more than quarter of a century ago. So I've been with L'Oreal for 25 and a half years. I joined in 94. At the time when L'Oreal was setting up its subsidiary in India. So I was one of the first few employees when the company had about 35 employees. And I did different roles in commercial team, marketing team within the Indian subsidiary. In different divisions, we have divisions based on the channel. So I was working in the mass market division, then the professional products division. Then I moved to the UK and I was in the marketing team in the UK, and it was really, really interesting. It was the marketing team of professional products division, and this was at a time when the Indian market did not have, there was no salon business in the market. There were no hairdressing salons. It was more beauty salons. The industry was not that developed, and here I was in one of the most developed markets in the world, because UK in terms of hairdressing has been at the cutting edge for close to a century now. So I was in this market with huge inspiration, a lot of things that I learned, which I could take back, and we had a really strong, passionate team which helped develop the hairdressing market of India. And of course, over the last 20 years, we've been developing that market, and that's now one of the biggest, most successful professional products business for L'Oreal anywhere in the world. So I did that for about 6 years. Then I went to our headquarters in Paris. I was in the L'Oreal Paris DMI, or the international marketing team of L'Oreal Paris, the mother brand of the group.
The mothership.
Yes, absolutely. And then I did some roles in a zone position. And then I went back to India, because when you have an Indian, where do you send him first? In those good old days, you would send him back to India. So there was a good opportunity in India to run the consumer products, or the mass market business of the company. And I went back, and that's the large part of the business that we do in India, because it's a country where mass market products work much better. The market for luxury brands was still a bit smaller at that point in time. So I did that for about 5 years. Then I moved to Indonesia, which when you look at Indonesia and India from Europe, it looks like two countries which are very close to each other and very similar. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Right. And is that culturally speaking?
But in just about everything, I mean, except for the names of the two countries and the fact that they're both in Asia, everything else is different. You've got distribution, which is completely different. You've got culture. And when you start living in a country, every country's culture is multi-layered. It's almost like an onion, and you keep peeling layer after layer, skin after skin. And you have to really take time to go and visit consumers in their homes to understand what they do and why they do it. You have to spend time in the field to understand what the retailers do, what the salon owners do. And of course, a lot of time with the teams as well, because you get brilliant insights from the teams. And if we are able to create a culture where people are able to express themselves, it becomes really, really strong and magical, because then there's a real exchange. And while you bring value because of your experience and your knowledge of the company, at the same time, you get a lot of value from people who understand their markets, who understand things that motivate their consumers. So I was in Indonesia for almost 5 years, and then way back in May of 2016, I moved back to the UK as the country manager here, which, to answer your question, I had no idea that I would be doing this, but it's honestly, it's a privilege to be here, because this is one of the most competitive, one of the most advanced markets for us, and I have, I would say, some of the best brains in beauty, some of the best professionals in beauty work here in the UK subsidiary of L'Oreal. So it's really a privilege to work with them.
Wonderful. And I think it's so important that the modern leader of today really has got that international experience and the ability to actually communicate with lots of different people, lots of different layers, like you say, peeling off the skin of the onion. It's very, very multifaceted in all these different countries that you have worked in. Were there any kind of marked major differences, or any even cultural shocks for yourself when you were transitioning across from the various places?
I think a lot of people have asked me that question, and when I speak to people who've worked in different parts of the world, I think when you get expatriated the first time in your life, you go through a bit of a shock, because you go to a place with expectations, and then very often the reality and expectations are a bit different from each other, and that's where the shock starts setting in. But once you've done it a few times, and I can say that I'm a career expat now, because the first time I was expatriated, it was way back in 1999. So the last 20 years of my life, I've been moving across countries and continents. Once you start doing it on a regular basis, you move into a country with a very open mind, with this strong desire to listen to people, to understand why people do what they do. Because people are clever everywhere in the world. There's a reason why they do what they do. There's a reason why they behave the way they behave. And if we go in with the humility that there is something I can learn from this situation, there is something I can learn from this culture, there is something I can learn from everybody I interact with, you go in with that humility, there's no question of a shock. Because then you're going with an open mind. The shock comes when you say, okay, this is the way things are going to be, and you've already fixed your mind, and things turn out to be a different way, and then there's a little bit of a gap. So, frankly, I don't get shocked. The first time that I moved to the UK, which was my first expatriation, I think there was a bit of a difference between what I expected and what I saw, but nothing which shocked me. And of course, when you're much younger, you're also that much more open, and you're curious, you want to learn more stuff. So far, I've never been shocked. I've always been, every single time, I've been mesmerized by things that I understand in a new culture.
I can see how passionate you are, and it's infectious. I think it's brilliant. And obviously, diversity and inclusion with the 26 diverse brands that L'Oreal has and all the international experience you've had, clearly diversity, inclusion, and even now belonging, which you'd mentioned, is very, very important. What does diversity and inclusion mean to you, Vismay?
Okay, for me, and I have to thank one of my bosses who I came across much earlier in my career, who said that everybody that you come across in an organization brings value, and everybody has some good in them. And this is one of the key lessons that has stayed with me for a long time, and that it stays with me even today. And my very strong belief is, irrespective of background, of experience, of qualification, of gender preferences or religious beliefs or sexuality, I think everybody brings value. Every single person brings value to the table. You just have to recognize the value, you have to appreciate it. And if you do that, and if you create circumstances for people to bring their best, they will almost always bring their best to the table. And that, for me, very simply is diversity. It's this tolerance, not only tolerance, I think tolerance is the wrong word to use. It's almost inviting people from different backgrounds to come and bring richness and to bring more flavors to what you want to do. Tolerance is the wrong word, because tolerance means you're just letting people be, which is not the way it should be. You have to create circumstances which actually make people believe in a place, they believe in a cause, and they want to come and work for you, and they want to give their best to you. And that, for me, is true diversity and inclusion.
I completely concur with the piece about having people believe in a cause, and I guess you must do a huge amount of this around the brand awareness and building. That obviously it's a brand that people know, they buy into, they feel that emotional connection, and I think that's clearly it's almost how you're describing it with employees as well of the business, because they believe in the company long term, its values and what it stands for.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's L'Oreal, as you know, is a company that's over 110 years old now. In fact, we completed 110 years this year. And it's a company that's built on very strong values. So first and foremost, the first value that L'Oreal's built on is that of science and the importance of science. And in the beauty industry, you can make the choice of going after fashion and trends, which are a bit more short-lived, or you could go after science, which is a bit more long-term. And part of the success of the company comes from the fact that we've always focused on science and tangible, measurable benefits that can be given to consumers. L'Oreal also is an extremely conscientious organization, very strong on ethics. We are one of the most ethical organizations in the world. By Ethisphere Institute, we've got certified by Ethisphere Institute as one of the most ethical companies in the world 8 years in a row. We are the only company in the world which has a very strong sustainability record. By Carbon Disclosure Project, we are the only company that has got AAA 3 years in a row.
Wow.
And that's something that we've been doing not in the last 3 years. Sustainability, ethics, diversity and inclusion, gender equality, these are topics that we've been working on for the last 2 decades. And they are very firmly entrenched in the organization. And when you put all of these things together and you add to that this beauty industry, which is a very noble industry, which does a lot of good, which makes millions and millions of men and women feel good about themselves, give them the ability to express themselves, bring out their best every single day. I think as an industry, as a category, it's brilliant to work in. So when you put all of these elements together, you have a cause which is to bring the best of beauty to men and women across the world, to give them the opportunity to feel the best about themselves. And that's what we do every day. That's what 90,000 of my colleagues across the world do.
Indeed. And I think it's great to hear about all of the wonderful different initiatives that L'Oreal has. And I think, you know, in the modern world of 21st century business, it is very much about putting that purpose at the heart of what business does, because business, like you said, can be a real force for good, and making people all across the world feeling great about themselves and you know, feeling that, you know, that kind of emotional connection, value proposition with the brand is really quite wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And just moving on to another couple of quick questions, and I'll call this a lightning round before we kind of summarize, is...
Okay.
And I'm...
Why not?
You're thinking, uh-oh. So I'm starting off with quite a big question here, but I wonder, obviously you're very, very successful. Tell me, you know, what is your secret to success? Is there a miracle formula, since we're talking of science, that you think has kind of led you to be successful in what you're doing? And for any leaders who are tuning in today or listening in on the podcast version thinking, I'd love to be like that one day, is there any kind of advice that you could give to them?
But it's not advice. I can say what works for me, and it might not work for everybody, but that's my very strong belief that what has helped me succeed so far is just absolute trust in people that I work with. My very strong belief is, if a manager in today's world, which is becoming more specialized, more demanding, if a manager is able to surround himself with people who are better at their jobs than he will ever be, he's fine. And that's what I have. I have the leadership team of UK and Ireland. I have a human resources director who's better at human resources than I will ever be. I have a CFO who's better at finance than I will ever be. I have a communications director who's better at communications than I'll ever be. And my job is not to do their jobs. My job is to create situation and circumstances where they can come and they can do their best. And of course, I have to motivate them, I have to bring them together, I have to animate them, and make sure that all of these people in a collaborative manner are working together. That's what I've done for most of my life. In the 25 years that I've been at L'Oreal, of course there are good years and of course there are bad years, but I don't remember even a single case where we got into trouble and we got out because of one person. We always got out because of a team. So what's the secret of success? The secret of success is people you surround yourself with. Because when you fall down, the people around you are the ones who are going to help you get up. And if you don't have the right people around you at that time, you're not going to get up. It's quite simple. It's not rocket science. I think most managers, most successful managers understand that, and they surround themselves with people who are better than them. And I'm privileged that I'm surrounded by people who are much better than me at pretty much everything they do.
Oh, that's so modest, and that's great advice as well. And what about, I know authentic leadership and authenticity is a term that seems to be bandied around an awful lot at the moment, but what is true authentic leadership to you, Vismay?
But authenticity comes two ways. The first one is I have to be who I am at all points in time. I can't pretend to be somebody else. So I am who I am, and I mean, of course, we've had a chance to exchange a few times, but most of my colleagues know me for who I am. And at the same time, authenticity is also about how transparent you are with people around you. Because there will always be situations, there will always be questions, and some of them will be difficult questions. And we have to act with full sincerity and as much transparency as possible, because you can't be 100% transparent all the time, because there's always confidentiality, etc., etc. But with full sincerity, we have to take decisions which are in the best interest of our people and our business. And if we are being fair to our people and if we are being fair to our business, you will almost never make mistakes. And that's what authenticity for me is all about.
And what about inspirations that you've had in your life? Because you came across internationally from India to the UK first, before obviously going to the other different countries, then coming full circle back to the UK. But along your path, has there been anyone that has particularly inspired you, or leaders that have really had messages that have resonated?
But the first inspiration for me is always the people that I work with. So I've said it over and over again, but in every country that I've worked in every market that I've worked with, I've had this privilege of working with really passionate people who are on the top of their game, very energetic, very, very driven by this purpose of bringing L'Oreal products and bringing the best of beauty to consumers across the world. So that for me is the single biggest inspiration. Then are there instances where I've come across people who've given me inspiring quotes, inspiring ideas, ways of looking at things, and I mentioned this boss of mine who's still with L'Oreal, thankfully. He hasn't retired yet. Who told me that there's good in every person that you work with, and look for that good and appreciate that good. And I think that was something really, really powerful. And I'm glad that came to me early in my career, because the later somebody realizes that, the later you are. It's a pity, because I do come across a lot of people within L'Oreal and outside, and who see a lot of negativity around them, and who see a lot of things that they could criticize in their colleagues. And I think rather than focus on that, it's much more important to focus on the positivity. And in today's day and age, I think that optimism, that positivity is very important, because if we look around ourselves in the society, in terms of politics, in terms of what's happening globally, there's enough negativity. I think we have to look for positivity around ourselves.
Absolutely. We won't mention the B word then again. And what about externally? Have there been, you mentioned quotes there, are there any heroes or sheroes or books, quotes, authors that have been kind of instrumental to you?
But it's going to sound a bit cliche, but Steve Jobs did inspire me a lot. Although in terms of leadership style and in terms of inclusion of his people, he was probably not the most exemplary. But his ability to really pick up ideas and make them really big and impact the lives of millions of people. Because a lot of the things that Apple created when Steve Jobs was at the top of the organization were not technology innovations, but these were consumer innovations. He had this incredible capacity to understand what the consumer wanted, and then to present it in a very simple manner in form of products, which were the easiest to use, but an absolute delight. And more they've become a luxury symbol, and Apple has been a huge success for a long time thanks to him. So he does inspire me. I think that there are some brilliant ideas to get from there. The ability to take risks, the ability to follow your gut, because I think from time to time, and when it's real innovation, you need to actually follow your gut as well.
Absolutely. And last question for you, is there any advice that you might have given to your younger self, the young Vismay?
Oh my God. So most of my colleagues who worked with me 20 years back would say, even if you give any advice to young Vismay, he probably wouldn't listen, because the young Vismay was a bit of a jerk. But if I was to give any advice, it would be patient. Because if I go back enough in time, I don't think I was patient enough, and I don't think I was listening to people around myself that much. But of course, thanks to the advice and thanks to all the people that I've worked with, over the years I've learned the importance of listening to people, the importance of surrounding myself with good people, and creating this circle of trust where I can trust them and they can trust me enough for us to give feedback, to tell me when I'm wrong. Because I'm really happy, because the team that I work with today, the leadership team of UK and Ireland, tells me when I'm wrong. And I have absolutely no problem accepting I made a mistake, and I do make mistakes, we all make mistakes, and I have no problem accepting it. And there's this circle of trust where all of us are looking after each other, all of us are making sure that if one of us is making a mistake, everybody else is cautioning that person, is helping them come back on track, etc. And that's brilliant. So I would have liked to be more patient when I was 26 or 27 years old.
Oh, they say it's a virtue, but clearly you've not done too badly, have you?
Thank God.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. It really has. And I'm sure all of our listeners at home will have got a great deal out of listening to this podcast or to the video version on the Fireside Chat series. So what I'm going to do is actually just summarise for everyone who's been tuning in. I will put all of the show notes from today's Fireside Chat and thought leadership piece with the wonderful Vismay onto the website, so you can visit www.dalglobal.org/podcast. I hope you've learned as much as I have. It's been wonderful sitting here and chatting with Vismay. I think there's one thing that's really come out, and that is absolutely how much he trusts his team. You know, so effusive in his praise he's been about the people that he works with. It's really quite infectious, and I think there's plenty of things that we can all take back with us. Certainly to be yourself and be authentic and really try and embrace new challenges, whether they be overseas, whether they be in your current organisation, within your current company, but actually to be really open-minded. You know, one thing that I'm definitely going to take away with me from today's interview is the fact that actually everyone's got something good in them, and so the sooner that we learn this, you know, I think the more positive that can be in our lives and indeed in our careers as well. So I think that's a fantastic pearl of wisdom that Vismay has shared with us today. So I'll say thank you very much again. My name is Leila McKenzie-Dellis, and you've been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, brought to you by DAL Global. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Vismay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.